pleasure to be here with all of you tonight and remembering the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Krishna's incarnation, as the Bhagavatam presents Krishne swabha tomo bhagate dharma ganadi bisaha kalu nashta drishamesha puranarko danojit ditaha. And that is that after Krishna, who came here to give special mercy to the world, anugrahaya bhaktanam manusham dehamastita vajate tadrishi kridha yashutva tatparo bhavet. The Bhagavatam says Krishna comes anugrahaya, to give special mercy. Graha means to grab. You know from astrology the grahas. And anugraha means to grab somebody and pull them in the right direction. Is special mercy. Anugrahaya bhaktanam, for all the devotees, Krishna comes to give mercy. Manusham deha, he comes in a special body. Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, it's not that he doesn't have an eternal form. We know that he does. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sakchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karanam. Krishna is Avyaktam Vyaktamapanam Manyate Mama Budhaya Param Bhava Majananto Mamavya Manutamam. He said, it's not that I come from the impersonal, then I become personal. The personal is Krishna's eternal form, and from him come various other aspects. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratishtanham amritasya tasya shashvatasya tatarmasya sukasya ikantikasya cha. The Brahman effulgence comes from Krishna. And the Srimad Bhagavatam says, Vadanti tat-tat-vavidas tatvam yajganamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite. The absolute truth is one, Advaya Gyan Tattva, but there are varieties within the oneness. Brahman, Paramatma, topmost Bhagavan, the source of everything. And Anugrahaya Bhaktanam Manusham Deham Astita. Krishna appears in that original form in this world, walks on this planet as Jananivasa, he who walks amongst the Jana, the old people he walks amongst. And Bhajate Tadrishi Krida Yashutva Tatparo Bhavet. He does that so that we can remember him. Otherwise, what are we going to talk about? The news or the weather or sports? That's the three big things, right? And everyone goes on talking. The animals talk and talk. But the Bhagavatam says, when you're able to talk about Krishna, then you make advancement in life. And we just mentioned it in the Sanskrit verses that we all chanted together. That when you're able to talk about Krishna and remember him, then you become elevated spiritually. And that's why Krishna comes. Yashutva tat paro bhavet, because then you have him to talk about. But even after he leaves, behind him comes the Srimad Bhagavatam. The instant that Krishna disappears from the eyes of the world, then Krishne swadamo pakate dharma ganadi visaha. How are we going to support dharma in the world? How will we get good qualities, especially now in the Kali Yuga, where everywhere you turn, there are the influences of the lower modes of nature? Isn't it? So where will people in the world get support who want to elevate themselves and develop transcendental qualities and rise above the mire of the material world? And from Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishne swa damo bhagate dharma ganadi bisaha kalo, in Kali Yuga, kalo nashta drishamesha puranarko donodita. Those who want light, those who want dharma, those who want to develop pure devotional service to God and use human form of life, their human form of life properly, have the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the great treasure. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is a transcendental literature. We know this from the story of the Bhagavatam itself. Srimad Bhagavatam. We know the story of how Shukadeva Goswami, of course, Brahma Vaivarta Purana gives more details about how in the womb of Vyasadev's wife was a child, but he didn't come to term and come out of the womb for about 16 years. That's a long pregnancy. And the reason he didn't come out, because there was a great soul within the womb of Srila Vyasadev's wife. And he didn't want to come out into the world because he was afraid of Maya. And we should be afraid of Maya because, as Prahlad Maharaj, when he's mentioning how everyone's afraid of Lord Nrsingadev, all the demigods were so afraid, and even Lakshmi Devi, she didn't know, she'd never seen her husband like that. And they pushed Prahlad forward. And in his prayers he says, Trastos mehan kripana vatsala dusa hogra samsara chakra kadadad basatam granita vadhasva karma buddha shatama tengri mulam pritopa varga sharanam hwayase kadanu. He said, I'm not afraid of I'm not afraid of you, my Lord, with your high wedge-like ears, your roaring that's scaring everybody, including the elephants that guard the various directions of the world. They're fleeing. So what I'm afraid of is your Vishnu Maya, that I might fall back into it again. Those who are transcendentalists are very aware of the subtle influence of Maya and how one can easily be swept away, have the greatest opportunity, then lose it within a few moments, and then have to go through the cycle of birth and death again and again and again until one comes to the very fortunate position of getting a human form of life. Labva sadulabamidam sahu bahusambhavante manushamartanam anityam apihadira. Bhagavatam says it's very, very, very rare. Labvam sudurlabam. It's very rare to get a human form of life. So if one gets one, says the Bhagavatam, you should know it's very temporary. Don't get the large tube of toothpaste, metaphorically, because you're not going to be here that long. But the good news is anityam. If you're able to take the anityam and turn it into something eternal, trade it in. You get something temporary, it's withering, but able to trade it in to get something eternal. You made the best business deal of your life. So Shukadeva Goswami also knew this. He was a transcendentalist. In Patanjali Muni's book called the Yoga Sutras, various commentators have written on the sutras, and one such commentator said, yogis are as sensitive as an eyeball about interacting with the material world because they know a little samskar from this world sticks for many lifetimes. So they try not to get smeared by the material energy. We talked about that last night. And why the eyeball? Eyeball's one of the most sensitive places on your body. So they're very sensitive of how they interact with the world because they don't want to take the impression, especially the Hladini samskar, that they find some peak pleasure point here in the material world and then they're forced to keep coming back to it even after they decide they don't want it anymore. So yogis are like that, and Shukadeva Goswami was a great yogi. Even when he was in the womb, he had that disposition that I don't want to interact with the material world because I'll be dragged away by Maya. Vyasadeva called Krishna. Krishna came and said, you come out, I'll give you a guarantee. But even after he came out, as is described at the beginning, the outset of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasu Vashaiti Samprashna Samhrishno Vipranam Brahmaharshani Pratipuja Vachastesham Pravaktum Upachakrame Sutu Vachayam Pravajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Kartara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Mayataya Taravo Benedus Tam Sarva Bhutaradaya Munim Anatosmi Yaswadabhava Makila Shruti Bhavamikam Adyapadipam Atirshatam Tamundam Samsarinam Karuna Yaha Purana Guhyam Tam Vyasasunu Vayami Guru Murinam. These first three verses set the stage for the Srimad Bhagavatam, how this literature is dealing with some very special personalities. And Shukadeva Goswami, he's coming out of the womb in the second verse. And his father is Vyasadeva. His father says, my son, please, let's talk. And apeta kritam, he doesn't want to even talk about taking the sacred thread. He doesn't want to go to school. I don't want to be entangled. That's Shukadeva. So he just leaves for the forest. And his father calls out to him. Poetically, the Bhagavatam says, the only response he heard was from the trees, who echoed his call, son, please come back. And Shukadeva Goswami then goes to the forest, and there he is absorbed in undifferentiated monism. He sees God's everything as one, and he's part of it, and he's detached from everything, completely aloof. So his father, being the great Vyasadeva, Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, then sent some of his students, according to the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, to the forest where his son was dwelling. And they had them recite some verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. For instance, Aho Bhakiyam Stanakada Kutam Jigham Saya Payad Apyasadvi. This is a verse that comes twice in the Bhagavatam. Once comes from Uddhava, actually one time, but the description of the verse is there in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's about Baki. Baki is the sister of Bakasura, nice family. Baki means Putana. And Putana wanted to kill Krishna. So she was sent by Kamsa, first demoness who came to kill little baby Krishna, because Kamsa was so envious. He sent all these hoodlums, dacoits, mystics, wizards, who could heartlessly kill children. And this one got through. Putana was very crafty. She disguised herself as a beautiful woman. And even as she went into the house of Nanda, especially the cowherd men were, please come in. And everyone greeted her because it's a very open-hearted feeling there in the village. Everyone's coming to see the baby. Many women would pick him up. So she went in. She had already smeared her breast with deadly poison. She picked up the child. He suckled and he killed her. And she died. So what happens to Putana? Bhagavatam says she attained the position of one of Krishna's mothers, a kind of maidservant of Krishna, a motherly, like in the culture there's many mothers. She was in a motherly relationship with Krishna. How come? How did she attain this? Who knows? Except for Aho Bhakiyam, that's why he says Aho, this is amazing, this is amazing, this is amazing. Aho Bhakiyam Stanakala Kutam Jikam Sayapayat Apyasadvi. She was a sadvi. She was not truthful, she was a bad person. But Krishna accepted her. Kambadayalum Sharanam Brajema. So this is Uddhava when he's talking to Vidura, and Vidura is asking, how are you? And Uddhava has to wrest himself away from the spiritual world to answer the question. And then he starts remembering all of Krishna's pastimes. And he thinks about how Krishna killed Putana, but he gave her liberation. But not any kind of liberation. The highest kind, where she got a personal relationship with him. So he said, oh, what is this? Who is this person? Then he remarks, Kambadayalum Sharanam Brajema. Who would take shelter of anybody else in this world but Krishna? Because there's so many bad masters in this world, promise so many things. Kama dinam katina katida palita durnideshas tesham jata mayina karuna natrapa no pashanti. In a prayer from the Padyavali, the devotee says, for how long and how many lifetimes have I obeyed the bad masters who've never given me mercy? Bad masters of the senses. They never gave me time off, and I never questioned them. I just followed them blindly, but no more. Utsrijayatanata yarupite sambrata labdhapuris. Now I've gained my intelligence and I'm going to give everything to Krishna. That's when one's life begins. So upon reciting this and other verses in the forest, Shukadeva, who was unattached from anything material, he was already liberated in Brahman. He heard these verses and he said, what is this? It's so attractive. I can't resist it. It called him back to his father to learn the Srimad Bhagavatam. And after he learned the Srimad Bhagavatam, then, as it says, he went out into the world because he had no other business except to distribute it to others. He didn't need any profit. Why? How do you know that? He didn't wear any clothes. He had to keep up the latest style. I was thinking today, much of the world's economy is supported by hair products. How many oceans of shampoos? Because there's an Airbnb-like room I'm staying in, and there's a huge thing of shampoo, a huge thing of conditioner, which I don't need, I'm happy to say. I was thinking how much money I've saved. And I was thinking somewhere there's an ocean of shampoo because so much invested. And this is Shukadeva's attitude about the world. Just read the second canto of the Bhagavatam. He said, what do you need a plate for? Just use your hand. What do you need a bed for? What do you need? What is that system? You turn it, there's a number system. It's one of the biggest businesses in the world nowadays, of mattresses. Do you know that? If you want to get rich, get into mattresses. He said, I'll just lie on the ground. There's a flatter ground somewhere. So that's Shukadeva's attitude. But he says, oh, there's something that attracts me. It's the Srimad Bhagavatam. I can't resist it. So this is one of the main topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Aparamashtamunayo, nigranta apyurukrame. That nigranta, this is a granta, but this is the transcendental call from the spiritual world. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin prati shlokam avadyavatyapi. It's coming out when Vyasadeva meets Narada Muni. Narada Muni is morose. He's written so many literatures. Excuse me, I'm backwards. Narada Muni meets Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the disciple of Narada Muni. And Vyasadeva was morose because he had written many literatures. And they're about self-realization in general. But it's kind of the conundrum even we have nowadays when people go to give bridge classes and they're teaching and they're wondering, does the bridge lead anywhere? Are we able to cross over anywhere and actually get somewhere? And Narada is saying, you really blew it. You wrote all these literatures on self-realization, but you missed the point completely. And he said, this is jagupsitam. It's actually horrible what you've done. He really chastised him. And he said, no wonder you're morose. You blew it. He said, so what did you forget? You forgot to talk about Krishna. He said, go back and talk about Krishna directly. Because, as I say, Yashutvat Taparo Bhavet, earlier verse, means when you're able to hear about Krishna because of his Leela, his pastimes, just by hearing Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, your fortune changes. You want to change your fortune? Get an extra job. Does that work? You want to change your fortune? Do scratch off. Does that work? No? If you want to change your fortune, move to another place. Wherever you go, there you are. Right? They say, you can move to Bengal, but you take your fortune with you. Wherever you go, your fortune is stuck. And Chanakya Pandit said, your fortune follows you like a little calf finds its mother. I've seen it at Goshala. Had a little calf, all these cows. They let the calf go, and it just zips over straight to its mother. I think, how did you find her? That's how it works. And that's how Narada is also saying, Tasyaiva heto pariteta kovide, labhyate yad brahmatam uparida, talabhyate dukkha varanyata sukham kalena sarvatra gopira ramasa. That's already set up. Your fortune's going to follow you, your material fortune. You don't worry about it. No matter what you do, no matter how many charts, and by the way, all the astrological charts are the same. If you look at it, you go, how does it look? It looks really good. Then it looks really bad. Oh, then it looks good. then it looks bad. Oh, and that's the material world. That's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Don't worry about it. That part's already going to be good and bad. Saves you a lot of money right now. You can thank me later. And so the point is, he says, attend to your spiritual practice. Make sure you advance. But what is that topmost spiritual practice? It is to hear about Krishna. Plain and simple. Narada Muni says, he told Vyasadeva, you go back and you try again. Vyasadeva went back to Shamyaprash. That's his home. By the way, special home. He lives in a cottage. There's no modes of nature there. Wouldn't that be nice to have a house like that? You go in and there's no modes of nature? Say yes. And it's surrounded by berry trees. It's called Badarayana because he just eats berries. And he went back into samadhi. And when he came back out, he gave what's called samadhi bhashya. That's the rest of it. Previously he had the beginnings, which is called the Bhagavat Purana. Prabhupada explains this in the Srimad Bhagavatam in his purport. But then, after his deep samadhi, and this is one of the most important parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva then was able to directly envision the pastimes of the Lord. And he could see how the Buddha Jivas are entrapped by Maya. He could see how Krishna is there and all his energies are there. And he could see all the pastimes of Krishna, the Leela. So when he came out, then he created Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Srimad Bhagavatam then is mentioned in the 10th canto as the means, of course it's mentioned in the first canto, Tato Jayam Udire. We say, Narayanam Namaskritya, Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Devim Sarasatim Vyasam, Tato Jayam Udire. This is our very means of conquest. Conquest over what? Birth and death and the modes of nature. But even more than that, there's something beyond even liberation in this world, and that is that one develops a relationship with Krishna. And that can be achieved by Srimad Bhagavatam alone. This is why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's main mission is Srimad Bhagavatam. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's Krishna's recent avatar, who descended. Avatar means one who crosses down from the spiritual world to the material plane to help us, to pull us out. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's opinion was that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the means by which one would become emancipated, but beyond emancipation, one would revive one's relationship with Krishna. Yeneir vindaksha vamuktamaninas toyastabhava davashudha pureya aruya krishnena paramparam tata patantyato nadrita yushmarangraya. And the demigods praying to Lord Krishna within the womb said, if you don't have this relationship with the lotus-eyed Lord that you get through the Srimad Bhagavatam, then whatever position you try to take in the world, you can become a big person. Name 3 big positions you can get in the material world.
CEO.
Huh? CEO. President. We did CEO. King. So all those positions, they're fallible. You'll fall back down from it. You can't maintain it. But if you're able to come to your relationship with Krishna, revived by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you're able to hear the sound vibration from the spiritual world, Tadvag Visargo, Janataga Viplavo, Narada tells Vyasadeva, this is not an ordinary this is not an ordinary sound vibration. It's from a different creation. And Viplavo means it'll transform your life from the inside out. This is the means, very means of conquest. Pada pankacha palasa vilasya bhakta karmashrayam gratitam udgratayanti santa. Tadvanda rikta matayo yatayo pirudha shrotoganas tamaranam bhajavasudevam. Fourth canto Srimad Bhagavatam says, yogis try everything to become fixed in consciousness, control their senses. He says, but because they're rikta matayo, which means they don't have anything positive, they're only avoiding the material world. And eventually, the waves of material existence come, even if it's after 10,000 years, like with Vishvamrita, they'll be washed away. He said, but yet pada pankacha palasa vilasya bhakta karmashrayam gratitam ukratayanti santa. But if you have the vilas, if you have the taste that comes from hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and you're enjoying that taste because it's about the effulgent toenails of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as verse saying, then you can cut all the knots of material existence. As we already recited, Vidyate Hridaya Grantish, Chidyante Sarva Samshaya. This will cut you free from the material world. And what do you have to do? Hear Srimad Bhagavatam. If you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, then transformation is swift. And therefore Prabhupada instituted in his society the means of conquest, which is to have Srimad Bhagavatam class when? Every day. And this is what the Bhagavatam says, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. He said you should always hear Bhagavatam, but if you can't hear it always, then hear it at least every day. That's what our acharyas say. And that's what Prabhupada wrote about when he was on the Jaladuta. If you read his intimate thoughts that he so kindly wrote down, he says, this is how I'm going to transform the world with the Srimad Bhagavatam. He said, because if they can hear the sound vibration, then they will transform. And they'll be able to go back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada, before he came to America, painstakingly produced the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in 3 volumes. It was very difficult. If you've ever written anything, even a pamphlet, you know how difficult it is. You have to proofread it 5 times so there's no typos. What to speak of get it printing? Just a leaflet. What to speak of a small book? What to speak of a medium-sized book? What to speak of a big book? What to speak of a full canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam? What to speak of on a typewriter? And in India at that age, during that era, I remember flying into Dum Dum Airport in the early 70s. And there was a worker sitting on the floor collating papers and punching a hole in the papers with a nail. That was the technology at that time. Don't mean to alarm anybody, but there's no cell phones or internet back then. Everything was very simple, and Prabhupada somehow or other on an old typewriter miraculously got, and there was a paper shortage, there's shortages of so many things, but there was a paper shortage. Prabhupada somehow or other got the paper and the wherewithal to print around 300-400 sets of more, 400-500 sets of Bhagavatams. How did he finance it? The whole matter was painstaking, very difficult to perform. And then when Prabhupada came to America with no money, all he brought with him was the Srimad Bhagavatam. In trunks. And when he came to customs, they said, "What's all this?" He said, "Oh, these are gifts." They let him through. And the Scindia Steamship Company had a storage that they allowed him to use for free in New York City until he got established. And the first thing he did, once he got some followers, which were Gargamuni and Brahmananda, Prabhupada took them to this hallowed storage locker, and he had them tie string around the volumes, like we do nowadays. You make the little stacks. Do you do that? Stack them together? Always sell in bunches like bananas. If you can sell one, you can sell 7 at the same time. So Prabhupada was gratified to watch them tying together these volumes. And some of them were already sold because Prabhupada sold one on the boat before he got off. So some people say he didn't have any money when he stepped on U.S. soil, but he had $25 because he got it from the captain of the ship. He sold it to him before he stepped off the boat. And Prabhupada also negotiated an amazing deal when he got 26 Second Avenue by Mukunda Maharaj's special arrangement, and he made a deal with the person who oversees the property there by handing him his books and saying, okay, you can be part of our group. And by the way, we'll need a discount for this. And he went, what? Prabhupada depended on the Bhagavatam to conquer the world. He depended on the Bhagavatam to get off the boat. As soon as he had a couple of followers that he attracted from doing Harinam Sankirtan in the park, he brought them to the storage lockers so they could get them weaponized and ready to go out to the world. And by the time Brahmananda went out there, he told me, said many of the places he thought to go, Prabhupada had already thought to go there. Orientalia was a bookshop that sold exotic spiritual books. And Brahmananda went there and he said, the owner said, oh yeah, this Indian elderly gentleman came here and he gave me some pastry with vegetable in it and he sold me a set of the Bhagavatams. So our movement, said Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is built on a mansion of books. Prabhupada said the reason that we have respectability in the world is because of our books. And to the degree that we're able to consume the Srimad Bhagavatam, to that degree we'll advance in devotional service. And to the degree that we're able to organize ourselves as communities around the world and distribute it to other people, to that degree we're successful in our endeavor to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. That sounded circular, I'm going to say it again. To the degree that we're able to organize ourselves to see to it that Srimad Bhagavatam goes in every person's home in Virginia. Were you in Virginia? How many people live in Virginia? 5? 10? 15? 20? How come you keep going this? Does that mean 5? Or am I supposed to call on you? Oh, I see. You thought I was asking if you lived in Virginia. Oh, I meant how many people total? What's the population of Virginia?
8.6 million.
8.6 million. So in your next order from the BBT, you need 8.6 million sets of Srimad Bhagavatams. Fair enough? Say yes. Why not? Krishna's unlimited. Lord Chaitanya is unlimited. Think big and enjoy life from the spiritual advantage. Prabhupada thought big, let's spread it all over the world. Now we should think big too. Now we're on a campaign presently for Bhadra Purnima. Bhadra Purnima. We discovered it in the Srimad Bhagavatam. You discover everything Krishna wants you to know and that you need to know when you read Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're straining our brains thinking, how come Prabhupada took so much trouble to bring the Bhagavatam to the West, to the world, and back to India as well? And how come nobody is selling the Srimad Bhagavatam around the world? For years, the total number of Srimad Bhagavatams sold was under 1,000 worldwide for many years. Sometimes fewer sets than that were sold. So, being charged with expanding book distribution, we were looking for a way that we could get some leverage to increase the distribution of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not like nobody thought of it before. There were many devotees who thought of the same idea, that we're going to learn how to sell sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. For instance, Hansaduta, one of Prabhupada's early disciples. I saw his whole operation. He was really fixed on selling sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, so much so that he sent his disciples to join Encyclopedia Britannica to figure out how they sold encyclopedias. And there was a devotee in Australia for many years. It was the only thing. He was a transcendental one-trick pony because all he wanted to do in his life was to sell sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's all he ever talked about. And back then, Srimad Bhagavatam's, the full set, we only had in English, one set was printed in Australia. It was around for a long time because the books were going so slowly. And he really couldn't figure it out. I used to see him here, there, and everywhere trying, but the timing wasn't right. He was totally sincere, and he's a great soul. He passed away, but we've seen it over the years that devotees have tried to sell Srimad Bhagavatam sets, but I'll just tell you a quick history of where we are and how we've gotten to where we are now. Shall I?
Yes.
You've got a little gas left in the tank ready for the last few minutes. It was 2000 and, let me work backwards. 19, 18, 17, I think we started, 1917. We found a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that says, when you give away a set of Srimad Bhagavatams on the full moon night in the month of Bhadra, which is generally in September, so then you get the return gift of going back to the supreme destination, Goloka Vrindavan. I said, wait, hold it. This could be it. And I think it comes into the category of what Louis Pasteur said, great discoveries come only into the prepared mind. If you're thinking about doing something, planning for it, then Krishna will put something right in front of your face. I brought it to our Sankirtan leaders. I said, look what I found. Look at this verse. We could make a whole festival around this. And they were so excited. I called my friend Bhima, godbrother in Bombay. I said, Bhima, listen, I found something. I think we can do something with this. So at that time, there were a few temple communities in America and a couple in India that we put out the word to as many people as we could, but it was a new thing. And even some leaders said, what are you doing? This is going to ruin the end of year marathon. We don't want to have 2 marathons, right? I said, no, it'll be all right. Let's just try it. And the first year we did 7,000, which was huge compared to what we used to do. But I was disappointed because the next year, as much as we pushed, we did another 7,000. I hate plateaus. And I was so determined that we're going to break the plateau after 2 years and go from 7,000 to 10. I went to the GBC meeting, it was midterm in Tirupati. I was there with the plenary session, and they let me give an announcement right after Bhagavatam class to the full assembly, and I said, in 2020, mark that date, you know what happened. We're going to sell at least 10,000 sets of Bhagavatams, and I said it in front of the deities. And all the leaders of ISKCON, 10,000, everyone, yay! And then coming home from India that year, I remember seeing a few people with masks on the plane and thinking, what the heck's going on here? And then as time moved on, January, February, March, NBA basketball stopped, and like, what's happening in the world? One thing after another, like dominoes, there was this total, anyway, I have to tell you. I won't go into the details and remind you of what happened. Everybody knows. It's the one thing we all shared in common, have shared in common in this life, that we all got shut down everywhere. And still there was this vow that we made, 10,000. And we were sitting there in March, April, and around the world devotees were saying, well, nothing can be done. But somehow or other, through using Zoom, the great savior of us all during the pandemic, and talking to leaders one after another here and there, a little light came out. And it turned out that we didn't have to walk out into the world. We could do just fine from where we were, from the telephone, on Zoom. And what happened was, everyone put their heart and soul into it, because what else are you going to do during a pandemic when you're not sure if you're going to live anyway? You might as well distribute a few Srimad Bhagavatams as the ship is going down. And everyone got behind it. And instead of distributing 10,000, we distributed over 20,000 sets of Bhagavatams. As usual, as it happens every year, after we hit or smash a goal, we think that was a fluke. We could never do it again because there were special circumstances, and we already talked to everybody, right? You've heard that one before. That doesn't apply. This is transcendental. It's not a sales thing. This is Lord Chaitanya. So the next year we thought, let's try again, and again it went up over 30,000, and then over 40,000. And now what our goal is, and we set this goal several years ago, is to develop the capacity worldwide to get to 100,000 sets of Bhagavatams in 1 year by 2026 as a baseline for the world. Because the Bhagavatam is our very means of conquest. The Bhagavatam is what Prabhupada had it in his vision for changing the world. The Bhagavatam is what saves us from ourselves and our minds, which pull us down in a whirlpool-like situation where we're just complete anxiety. The Bhagavatam knows us better than anybody because it's Krishna. And he's come here to speak to us directly through the pages of the Bhagavatam. And if you take time to read the Bhagavatam and hear it, and you do it with your family and do it with your kids, you'll notice that your kids become sadhus, saints. You'll notice that your life starts to make sense, even though you're overwhelmed, and everything comes together by the power of the vibration of the Bhagavatam. The greatest kindness anyone can ever do for themselves and others is to read the Bhagavatam and make sure other people have the facility to read the Bhagavatam. After all, it's available. And we don't know for how long, because you can't count on anything in this world. We know enough. So we're on a mission. We want to cover the earth with Srimad Bhagavatams. Not our mission, it was Prabhupada's mission. And because he wanted it, if we help him and go out of our way to take some trouble to distribute the Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll be successful in our spiritual lives, and the Krishna conscious movement will expand all over the earth planet. And one last point from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is one of my favorite lessons, which comes from Vamandev. And it's instilled in me this idea of what's called the doctrine of preemptive giving. Because Vamandev approached the king and told Bali, I just want 3 paces of land, and then Shukracharya figured out this is not a little Brahmin, a cute little Brahmin. He's actually Vishnu, and he's going to totally rip you off. He'll take everything. And Bali had this transcendental goodness in his heart, and he said, okay, if it's Vishnu, I should give him everything. And he gave the 3 steps of land, which meant inevitably that everything would be taken from him. So the lesson from this story is that everything already belongs to Krishna. And everything I think is mine is an illusory concept. That is, everything I have is on loan, it's going to be taken. But here's the doctrine. The rest, everything I said you already know. And this you already know too, but it's good to be reminded. And that is, if you give away what you have to Krishna before it's taken away, you get credit. If you miss that chance by 1 second, you're just like everybody else in the material world. You blew it. Because you could have given it away while you had a chance as a human being to say, Krishna, it belongs to you. It's 3 steps of land. I know you're going to take everything, but you take it anyway. Then you become famous, and you also get elevated to the highest position. And if you wait too long, and cousin Dilip comes to you because you're the only one in the family that has money, and he needs a liver transplant, and everyone in the family comes to you and says, you better pay for it because you're the rich one in the family. Your money's going to go for a liver transplant. I mean, all glories to Dilip, but if you give it for Srimad Bhagavatam before your family members come to you and say, Cousin Dilip needs a liver transplant, and you're the only one and we've elected you to pay all the money for it, then you become transcendental hero for giving it away to Krishna before it's unceremoniously taken from you by Cousin Dilip, the government, a thief, erosion through inflation, whatever it may be. So the Bhagavatam teaches us you're going to be safe with Krishna. Just give everything to Krishna, and for your livelihood, distribute Srimad Bhagavatam. Give it to the world. It's very simple. And that was Prabhupada's mission, and that was Lord Chaitanya's mission. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. He wants me to ask you to sponsor sets. I like talking about the philosophy, and I like sponsoring myself. I'm always a little reticent to urge everybody. Actually, that's not true. I go out on book distribution all the time, and I don't mind asking people for donations. It's a good idea. If you feel like doing it, I highly recommend it. Just sponsor away. You can pay later, and it costs you less than a salad in California. If you go to a fancy restaurant, organic food, they'll give you a little salad for about $125 and a glass of water. So anyway, if you would like to sponsor, then probably you call out the names of whoever raises his or her hand. You say the name, and whenever then Loka announces it, everyone can help by saying, Haribol. Okay? That's your part. You ready?
Yes.
And at the yajna, it's confirmed. I just confirmed it this morning. We're having a Mahayajna in Mayapur for Bhadra Purnima. All the names of everyone who sponsors will be read at the yajna. And also, Bhima Prabhu and I last year made a silver box, and every person that sponsors a set of Bhagavatam anywhere in the world, we're putting their name in a book. We made a book last year for all the sponsors. We put it in the silver box, and I personally went on the altar for Lord Nrsingadev in Mayapur, and I gave it to the Pujari, and he leaves that box right at the lotus feet of Lord Nrsingadev. So your name will be in that box. When His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj was in Naperville for the last time, and his disciples came to him and said, Guru Maharaj, we've come together and we've been able to put together a pledge of 400 Srimad Bhagavatam sets for this Bhadra Purnima. Maharaj looked up and he said, why not 5,000? And based on that, I've been working with the disciples of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, and we've formed a campaign which is called the GKG 5000. We imitated the logo of the Indianapolis 5,000. 500 anyway. Whereas ours is 5,000. And disciples all over the world are joining in this. We're especially featuring Gopal Krishna Maharaj this year because he was the champion of book distribution. He was a champion of Bhadra Purnima. And all his disciples, especially now when he's had his 80th Vyasa Puja, have wanted to do something. So we're counting all of the sponsorships of His Holiness towards the 5,000. It'll be in the aggregate also, but towards the 5,000, just so they can offer Maharaj what he said. Why not 5,000? Just a side note.
And the yajna is when?
On Bhadra Purnima. It'll be live broadcast. You can watch it online. And what's more, the process of getting the books out, we have an international organized system so that all the books get deliberately counted on that day. Even people who have taken them earlier, we're offering their donation of the books on Bhadra Purnima, so they'll be accepted at that date and done at the fire yajna. So So everything's coordinated so that everyone gets the full credit.
Okay, so we don't, because I had thought that you actually have to donate on the day of Bhadra Purnima. So this, our donation today counts towards Bhadra.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
please make sure you come here and give the names of your whoever parents or family member that you wanted, because you want to write them down properly.
Yes. See, we start actually doing this right after Gaur Purnima. And it leads all the way up to that date. So we organize it so everybody's included in the fire yajna, everybody's name goes on the altar. So we make the intentional offering of the book so the Lakshmi can come in at any time, and we have it all spring-loaded, ready to go. Let's speak of the sets going overseas. We've built what we call pipelines to many countries. First one was to India, which we call NIFTA. If you've been around long enough, you might remember NAFTA. It was a North American Free Trade Agreement. So we called this North America-India Free Trade Agreement, NIFTA. And that is, we've made a legal system to transfer funds and books over. They have the books there. We transfer the funds there. We also have the team on the ground there that goes to the villages to make sure that they're placed. They have a learning center in every village, which is really nice. And we found that one set there, we have videos of this, of the people, once they get it, it transforms the whole village. There was one woman who became the guru of the whole village. She started reading Bhagavatam every day, and you see the whole village comes there, and she's teaching Bhagavatam, and everyone's transformed. There's a way in which many of these villages, of which there are, as you know better than me, tens and tens of thousands all over India, they're vulnerable because people take advantage and they go in with all kinds of other ideologies and influence people. This is a safeguard. It brings back the Bhagavat culture to these villages. So it's kind of a nerve. We sort of feel like, yeah, that's their culture. They should be able to preserve it. But the epitome of it is not the smarta ideas or anything, but it's the Bhagavat itself. So this is the greatest service to do. And it goes a long way to solidify Krishna consciousness in the world, because those villages, Prabhupada used to say, are really the foundation of Indian culture and Bhagavat culture. But also I can say in South America that we get these videos back from people, they don't have enough money to afford a set for their lifetime. And when they get a set of Bhagavatams down there, we get testimonials, families with tears in their eyes, that they can't believe their good fortune, that there's others in other parts of the world that would think of them and then send a set of Bhagavatams down there. So it has a huge impact, and we have painstakingly made it so that as soon as the money is realized, we're already ready to have them go out. There's no lag time. They go out as soon as possible and reach their destination. It's a network.
Each village gets one set? Or
Each village gets a set. That's all they need for their library there, and everybody's able to use it. Yeah. And if you want one for your house, then a team will come over to your house and do an installation. They'll come in your house and set up Bhagavatam, do a little ceremony, a small puja to install the book. You can invite all your friends over if you want, and they can see the Bhagavatam. We read the preface aloud. We pass the book around. Everyone in the family reads one paragraph, and it's very sweet, little ceremony. So it's not just for India. If you live here, if you have more than one room in your house, if you have a cabin in the woods, there's no place worth living if it doesn't have a set of Bhagavatams in it.